Hello everyone. Since the last video, I have worked in 4 different areas of this project. I have tweaked the long bamboo type, created textures for the wood objects, finally created the final bamboo type, and I've come up with ideas for future aesthetic changes. So the first thing I did was finish the long bamboo type. I started by making animation clips for each position the katanas could be in while chopping it, and I thought it looked decent, but I had this problem where if I pressed the input buttons too fast, the chopping animation wouldn't play and instead the katana would default back to the idle animation. I'm still not 100% sure if this was due to some type of input lag with Unity or due to my scripts, but it was fixed if I made the animations have a 0-second transition and then setting the animation to be triggered from any state rather than relying on a previous chop to be executed. I think it looks a bit worse like this, but it's not horrible. One thing that might make it look better is if I have the bamboo split apart as it's chopped, instead of doing the cartoony thing right now where it stays together until the end where it falls apart. This would be really annoying to program though, so I probably won't bother, to be honest. I also made a texture for the long bamboo type. I spent a long time confused as to why bamboo segments identical in shape had different UV maps, and on top of that, why the UV maps were curvy instead of straight. And it actually got to the point where I tried to just work with it and make weird curvy textures that fit each bamboo segment, but finally found out that apparently setting your location, rotation, and scale in Blender has an effect on your UV maps, and I still don't understand exactly why that is, but it's probably good practice to do before you import anything into Unity anyways. From there I tried to make it fade out like the other bamboo does when you cut it, but if all the pieces weren't cut, it caused the graphical glitch that you can't easily avoid in Unity, where if 2 transparent textures are on top of each other, the engine doesn't know which one to display on top. A workaround was to just make the bamboo fall off the screen, which looked kind of weird to me at first, but I've gotten used to it now, so it's probably going to be the way it's going to stay. The next thing I did was make some textures for all the different wood objects. The horizontal and vertical wood was slightly tricky because the model gets deformed when it gets chopped, but I finally figured I could just leave the center of the wood a flat single color since the player only sees it for half a second anyways. I think the textures look good enough, but I have this problem where the katana on the left doesn't line up with the vertical wood on the left, and this is because the katanas have to have a different height. The left and right katanas have to have a different height when held horizontally, so they don't clip into each other. And hopefully in the future I'm thinking I can fix this with a sort of animation trick that I make, because I'm eventually going to make some animations specifically for the wood chopping, and hopefully I could just, fix it there. The next thing I did was create what I plan on being the final bamboo type. As I explained before, the gimmick with this bamboo is that the player has to remember what orientation it's in and then replicate it later. I finally decided that it would just be an inexplicable magic piece of bamboo that, after being cut for the first time, would split apart and rotate in a way that doesn't reveal its original orientation. There were a few problems I learned while making this. The first was another really simple thing like the Blender issue I had earlier, where there was just something I just had no idea existed. In Unity I knew about the start function you could call, but I had no idea there was a very similar function called awake. What was even worse was that, after looking it up, all the documentation that explained the start function actually explained the awake function too, so I don't know how I missed that, but the problem with the code was that I was calling a function in the object script before the start function had been called, and since the function used variables that needed to be instantiated first, the program would crash. Since the awake function runs before start, switching to that fixed the issue. The other problem that I came across was my regular bamboo stopped moving. This is the first bug that actually freaked me out because I was worried I had broke my entire game. Since this new bamboo type required a lot more animation work compared to the other bamboo types, I figured it had something to do with that. And for some reason my brain thought it would be more efficient to use the same animation controller for regular bamboo and the memory bamboo, even though the only animations they had in common were one idle animation and one chopping animation. The obvious next conclusion would be that I triggered one of the memory bamboo animations for the regular bamboo object, but the problem was a bit more annoying than that. The problem happened because I had clips in the animator that controlled position and rotation of the parent bamboo object. This made sense in the context of the memory bamboo because this whole thing is contained in another parent object, but it doesn't work for the regular bamboo. Weird thing was, this problem occurred even though there was no way these clips could be activated by the regular bamboo. but to fix it, I just needed to create separate animation controllers for the memory bamboo and the regular bamboo, which actually makes more sense anyways. So after finishing all my bamboo types, I went back to thinking about more big picture stuff. One thing I've been doing is messing around with the look of my game. By messing around with some of the post-processing effects, I've realized that giving things some shadows and texture creates a lot more depth in my scene. The problem is I picked the art style I did because it was easy enough that I could actually pull it off, and so I wouldn't be sure how to make that depth work with an actual art style. Another problem is that the light source in the scene should technically be coming from the sun in the back, but the bamboo needs to be lit from the front so the player can see it. And this makes sense in the original art style, I think, but once you start adding shadows, I think the discrepancy will start being a lot more noticeable. This art style problem continued when I tried to add grass to the scene. I couldn't find out how to make the grass a single flat color, so it looks kind of out of place with the normal art style. There are workarounds I can think of to make the grass a flat color, but I'm not sure I want to put that much work in if I'm considering changing the art style altogether. I think from here I'm going to see if there's a way I can add a small amount of depth to the scene without diverting too much from the original art style, and hopefully that doesn't end up just being the worst of both worlds. Another thing I've been thinking about is adding a day-night cycle to the background of the game. I think this could add a sense of progression to the player as they chop the bamboo. This leads to the same problem from earlier though, where the bamboo being visible to the player has to be the #1 priority, and this might look a bit out of place. I also have this problem where the color palette of the game was designed for a sunset, so it would just be alternating between a sunset and a moon over and over again, which is kind of weird, but after making a very rough version of this, I think it looks good enough that I'm going to try it out. I also have plans where there could be a random chance to get something in each scene, like birds randomly showing up in the sunset, for example, because I think that would make things more visually interesting. But that's all I got to show for now. Feels like I have the foundation for everything finally down, so now I get to start doing the fun part and start putting everything together. And even though I'm excited to mess around with the look and feel of the game, one of my next goals will be to make it actually playable so I can have people test it and start getting feedback. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.